Professor Howard Williams takes you on a journey through time and space, exploring death and memory, past and present. Archaeodeath.
My skulls to remind me, memento mori.
Right. I do have I didn't drink enough water, a gravestone, my thing here as well. Yep.
Archaeodeathlings, welcome to another exciting and dynamic and deathly Archaeodeath interview with Kathryn. Kathryn, introduce yourself to our viewers and our listeners.
Hi, folks. My name is Kathryn Herschell. My pronouns are they or she. I work at the University of St Andrews.
Fantastic. And it's wonderful to get to chat with you because I came across your work very recently and we via the cemetery research conferences, and we had a chat and I said, well, let's do an Archaeodeath interview because death is your bag. So, I mean, could you give us a sense of, introduce yourself, how did you get into doing mortuary, funerary, deathly, morbid topics?
In a very roundabout way. So I did my undergrad 20 years ago, and I didn't think I would be able to do a master's, to be perfectly honest. I've got an ordinary degree. The degree I did was a BSc. It didn't have an honours option.
Yeah.
So I did my undergrad, thought fantastic, off I went and, got jobs, built a career for myself. I work in equality, diversity and inclusion at the University of St Andrews. My old manager, I had not long started, we were having our weekly one-to-ones, and he said, you're allowed to do training. We want you to do CPD. Is there anything that you want to do? I was like, I'll have a think. Can I get back to you next week? Yeah, no problem. So week rolls round and I sit down and I'm like, could I do a master's in gender studies? He sort of looked at me for a moment thinking like, damn well that's not what I meant. But was like, you know what? Yeah, let's make that happen. Let's have a look and see if you can do a master's part-time. Like my boss was super supportive. The Graduate School for Interdisciplinary Studies, bit of a mouthful, were really supportive. I didn't really know what angle I was going to take, but gender studies, that fits with my career. And I thought,
So just to be absolutely crystal clear, so you're in equality, diversity and inclusion, is that the right?
Yeah.
And gender studies is screams relevance.
Absolutely.
But it's academic. But then why the deathly angle then? Yeah.
The deathly angle came about. I was at the first module that I did, and it was a top masters. So the lecturer said, right, okay, for one of the marked pieces for this is going to be a 10-minute presentation. Any subject you like, as long as it concerns gender. And I went off for about 2 weeks just going, that's too broad. I don't know. Any subject
anything
I
and
want.
Nothing. Yeah.
So I had to think about it and I was turning it over. And, I'm the elder millennial. I grew up watching Time Team and Meet the Ancestors. Any pop archaeology history, I'm there, I'm all over it. And it kind of dawned on me. I was like, oh, hang on a second. I wonder if I could somehow rope in looking at skeletal remains from a gender angle. Off I go onto the university library and find that there's been some brilliant, fairly recent research looking at ancient double burials. Also, there's a Viking burial as well, where originally the excavations had assumed that these were, in the double burials, they'd assumed that they were a cisgender male-female couple because they looked like they were embracing and it was all very romantic and Romeo and Juliet. And then they were like, actually the DNA is saying these might be two guys. That's what this is saying. We're just, and watching the narrative change into brothers in arms, or they must have been very good friends, or,
Just
so that's
chums.
where,
good chums.
roommates. So that's where I came to it from, was looking at ancient double burials. And it was fascinating because I thought, like, somebody's bound to come along and be like, hang on a second, you're not an archaeologist. But nobody did. Nobody stopped me. I was allowed to talk about this because, I don't know, doing a master's, it allows you so much. There's just so much potential in it. Everyone on my course did very different things, and I just found this little niche and realized that it hadn't been very heavily researched. And it made me light up inside.
So you came, I mean, this is the the beauty and the, if I may say, is don't want to sound too gatekeepy, but the difficulty of archaeology is that everyone has access to it and feels like a way into it, and that is good. We want that. But of course, it attracts some, shall we say, some unhinged ideas and some very, but it is always the other thing about mortuary archaeology. It speaks to our present. It speaks to us and our identities today in a direct way. And yeah, so I don't want to get, this isn't about me, but just to make a point that, when I delve into these territories online, and surprise, it doesn't surprise me, but suddenly, my comment section lights up with rage at the idea of non-binary or gender complexities in fluidities and whatever, and just the rage and the all caps replies of
I fully expect I'm going to bring you more rage because I use my pronouns. But you're coming to this and being like, we don't know for sure, right? We don't know what gender roles were in these societies for these individuals. So it broadens the conversation, and that's a lot of what I do in my day job, is just encourage people to think a bit more broadly.
And it's and people use and misuse science because they think, if you're not perhaps not an academic, you think science gives you definitive answers, but actually that's not the way science works. And archaeological science gives you new possibilities and new ways of thinking about past and present, but it's not always, but you prove it, they did it. And you say, well, we're not about that, but we are sort of about leading people to new ways of thinking about society and how it works past and present and future. So it's about, so that's where I think gender studies and archaeology have had a really healthy relationship over the last 30, 40 years. And I think it's really exciting with burial archaeology to have people that may not have been coming to it from that gender studies angle. Yeah, that's really healthy. So, I mean, is it too early to ask about the Crossbones project? Because that was your,
let's go. Ended up. It's from that little 10-minute presentation, realizing that this is something that I not only could do, but was passionate about. I'm very lucky. The University of St Andrews allows the option to do a multimedia portfolio when you do a top masters. Right. So rather than doing a long written thesis or a policy review, it's quite it's a broad, it's an option. You could do a podcast, you could do things like anything that isn't written, basically. There is still a written component, don't get me wrong. And I love writing. I love writing an old essay, an article. But for me, that multimedia angle gave me so much more potential to explore things in a more accessible way. And Crossbones is just a fascinating site. And I thought the best way to explain it to people was to be able to show them rather than write about it and tell them. I just thought, I can use film. I can use a short film format, and I can present that to people and let them make their own judgments on it.
And so, this freedom to do a different kind of project is so, I think, liberating when you're dealing with archaeology, because the other thing about archaeology is that it's all about place and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really, and this is a rant that's not about you, but you can't help me. I have to do this type of thing. Even when you have people who've been trained as archaeologists at undergraduate level who come into a master's degree, they're not thinking visually, they're not thinking media, they're thinking text. And I'm constantly encouraging students to, especially when it's online submission of essays and dissertations and projects, whack in the images, not just for fluff, but make that part of the argument. And we are a very visual subject, but still, I think people are almost terrified of doing this. I think so. It's liberating, but also I wonder if many people do sort of freeze like rabbits in the headlights. Okay, I can do that, but what do I do? So, seeing the final result of the project, which we'll come on to, it obviously worked, but I feel it is. People think it's a light option, but actually, it's quite. Even though the youth of today are supposed to be more savvy, actually it's really complex to think about. How do I think about music and audio and text and image and place and that is all mashed together. It terrifies me, but it is an opportunity, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I had ideas at the start thinking, I'm going to do site specific. I'm just going to record the background sound of the city at the site. I did, and I listened to it back, and it was horrible. It was awful. Like, that was unusable, and just getting over the recording myself, being in front of a camera, or recording my own voice and going, I sound like incredibly Scottish. Why is that embarrassing? It shouldn't be.
That's good.
But wow. You get used
because you're in London, you got to go.
Yeah.
Fully. Got to sound like Billy Butcher from The Boys or something.
It gave me a lot of a bit of a steep learning curve, I have to say, because I did lots of aspects to the project. I did I made a zine that went with it. I did some sort of tactile craft, so using embroidery, using needle felting, things like this, things that were tactile that can go along with the project. So those things were in my wheelhouse already. That's great. But film editing, done a bit of it, maybe 15 years ago. Sound editing, nope, never done that. Music, I sing, I like music, but I'd never recorded before. And that was just a whole, it was so much more than I anticipated it being.
Hang on. So this is even more exciting than I thought it was, because I obviously I don't want to be sort of gushing, but the music was like oh my God, this is actually going into a song. I thought this was like something you must have already been quite proficient and used to, that you were tacking on to contribute to the new bit was the video editing, I assumed. But what you're saying is that oh God, right, okay.
Most of it was the new bit. Yeah. I was, again, incredibly lucky. I've been singing with a choir for 11, 12 years. It's Scotland's first LGBTQ choir, and we have an amazing musical director who does voice lessons one-to-one. So I got in touch with her, sent her this, and went, I've got a mad idea that I want to record this as part of my master's thesis. Can you help me with this? Because when I sing it, I sound like I'm doing a terrible impression of the person that wrote it. And I'm not Frank Turner in any way, shape or form. I don't want to sound like I'm just like hamming up a Wessex accent, So I like all thanks to Dr. Kathleen Croney for her help with that. But it was just such an opportunity. How many people have, choose to research a particular site and go, oh, here, there's a musician that I really like, and oh, they wrote a song about this site. What are the chances? I felt like I've got to take that opportunity. So I just emailed him and I was like, dear Mr. Turner, Frank, hi, I'm doing this thing. Could I maybe record your? And I thought the worst he can do is say no or not reply. I know that's fine, but he did reply. I don't absolutely have at it. Yeah, so it was amazing to get to do that.
Wonderful. And what I wanted to ask about that first, because obviously the other way is what is the Crossbones Cemetery? But it's important, I think, people understand that in many ways, and we'll be putting a link for everyone to go and watch this, if that's okay.
Absolutely,
if that's right. So what we'll be doing is, so you can go and watch this result as a separate video, which is wonderful and really got me thinking about a site that I've never visited. But I think it's really important to emphasise. You may disagree. You could, although that's a very special site. I'm not saying. You could almost do this with any burial ground, cemetery, crematorium, garden of remembrance, and tell a similar audiovisual story. Obviously, perhaps not as distinct as that, but any Quaker burial ground or any abandoned Bronze Age barrow cemetery or something. There's so many applications of this format. But now, why Crossbones? What grabbed you about that?
Crossbones is quite unique, I think. I was made aware of it maybe 2016-ish. Very good friend who actually lent some voice work to the film and also let me stay in his house for 2 weeks while I was in London doing my site interviews. Stephen Oswald, thank you. He whenever I've been down visiting, I go to London fairly frequently for gigs and things. And knowing that I've been trying to work my way around the so-called Magnificent Seven, and I like the sort of odd things, I like the sort of the strange, the weird, hidden gems when I go places. And he'd said to me, oh, have you heard of Crossbones? No, but I love the name. Tell me more. So I'd gone in. It was the middle of winter. It was mid-December that I visited first, and it fascinated me just on so many levels. Just this it doesn't look like a burial ground. It's not a big space. It's concrete on the ground. And there's the big gate, the big sort of iron railing along one side that is just festooned with ribbons and tributes. And it just, and there's, you know, there's art pieces and installations inside, and it caught my interest long before I'd considered doing a master's, long before, this is before I even worked in equality, diversity and inclusion. So yeah, I just, I have my friend to thank for just putting me onto this particular site and going, oh, you'll love it, go and visit. And I visited, most times I've been down because the art changes, and you know, with the seasons, the feel of it changes. And the more that I obviously started, you know, looking into this academically, the more fascinated I became.
And this is about a space about marginalised people, and almost like an ongoing site of rehabilitated recognition. I don't know. I don't. My terminology is probably that people are suddenly it's captured people's imaginations, particularly in the very end of the 20th and early 21st century. It's not gone away, but it's kind of people are realising this speaks to so many aspects of women's lives, but also other kinds of marginalised intersections. Is that fair to say? That people can you as well as the story of the women and their lives and deaths and people can connect to that, to other groups that may not have. And so how did you go about that in a sensitive way? Your style, composition of the video, what did that create extra problems and, you know, stresses? Oh, I don't want to get this wrong, I don't want to you know, I don't want to, or did you find it quite, well, this is a topic that's so distinctive, anything I do is gonna be positive? I'm interested in how you felt about that burden of responsibility, I suppose, in your choices.
Yeah, as you say, so Crossbones has a very strong connection in the sort of, I guess, popular consciousness, that it's connected with women who were sex workers in the sort of very late medieval, early modern period. There was 2 areas in London that you were permitted to work as a sex worker, and Southwark was one of them. And that's the sort of the history that's been very much latched onto with Crossbones, is that it's the Winchester geese, as they were known, the sex workers there. And yes, there is that connection, but it was also a pauper burial ground into the Victorian period. You know, it was in use for a very long period of time. And as far as I have been able to ascertain, it was never consecrated. So it was in use, you know, for a huge number of different people were buried there for a range of different, you know, backgrounds, different reasons, why they ended up here. So yeah, I was dealing with marginalised communities, burial of marginalised identities. I think for me, I wanted to represent the Winchester geese as, yes, being part of it, because if you look around the site, there's art and iconography really around for them, but also the project wasn't about me and my thoughts on it. It was about, you know, I could sit here and tell you why I like Crossbones. The project was me speaking to visitors and asking, well, why did you come today? And how do you feel about it? And what's, you know, really getting to the heart of how people reacted to the space while they were in it. And people had come for all sorts of reasons. Some people were, you know, they'd come specifically because they knew about the Winchester geese connection. Other people had just been passing. Somebody had come on a rainbow walking tour 20 years before. So it connects a lot of marginalised identities. And that's one of the things that I really like about it. It's brought together and it's given people a place of memorialisation and commemoration. There's a really beautiful piece of art in it just now. It's some big metalwork statue. It's called the Trans Angel, and yeah, there's some lovely tributes. See, I always read along the things written on the railings. There's a lot of pieces to, you know, people who have either, you know, they've been involved in sex work. This is recent people, you know, people that have lost their lives. There's pieces, you know, there's a lot of things around trans visibility, queer visibility. It's a place where people can come together and memorialize in a way that feels appropriate to them.
So there's a kind of an axis of sex, sexuality, gender connections that are far broader, and marginalization and visibility, but it's a sync in which everyone can be draw in a connection. And you don't. That's really important. And in terms of the way you did the video, if I may say so, obviously now we've chatted a couple of times, it's quite clear you're very articulate, and you could have done I'm not saying you should have done, but you could have done guys, here we are in the cemetery, walk to camera like some kind of TV personality, because you would have been really good at doing that. But you wanted to obviously step way back, because I thought this was, when I started watching, I thought I expect to see more of you, but it was clearly a careful choice to not center yourself in this and hear the voices, but you do appear, but you could easily have done it differently, is the point. Yeah. And I think that's really,
I think there were a lot of options for it. Yeah. I think partly I've become more comfortable in front of a camera now, partly due to doing that, admittedly, but I very much wanted to, I want to give a sense of the space. The space was the first thing, and what's held within that space. And, but doing a bit of filming of myself, I was doing it on my own as well. This was me and my iPhone on a selfie stick, trying to do this. So, but yeah, putting myself in the space and going like, okay, this is what my surroundings are like, and this is me in the surroundings. So interacting with them, because I spent a lot of time there for this project, but also before, and just seeing how people interact with it, the direction that they walk around. Do people stop and read all the little things around the railings, or do they leave little tributes, or are they lighting incense? There's lots of things happening.
As an archaeologist, I'm interested in the less discursive element. So I love that, obviously, what you said and how the captured perspectives that you included, but also I was very much interested in how there's a lot of things that you didn't discuss, and that's because they kind of either describing every material detail, every plant could be seen as a bit catalogue-y, but for me, your video captured a lot of that sense of space and place. You got that sense of the many complex components, and I found that really compelling. And it's a type of place where you clearly need to visit many times to start noticing little details and little sort of spaces within spaces, sort of microcosms, spaces, little niches where people are doing different things. Is that a fair characterization? Because that's what I came across in the video.
Yeah, I'd say definitely. Like, having visited at different times of year, different times of day, even. When I was down in July, I don't know how, but I'd never quite ventured right into the middle. I didn't think it was accessible, but there's a little path in, and you're just surrounded by sort of taller plants sort of hedging, and it's, I was like, I've been here so many times, and it's not a big space, and yet I'm still finding these like new areas that I can sit in, and it's a different experience of the space.
Was there any other active choices you made to do things or not include things, or with how you created the video that you want to share, or has that covered things?
I think the main thing was I had some lovely conversations with the volunteers. Just the most like welcoming, kind, giving of their time and their knowledge. I didn't want to interview the people that were volunteers there. I wanted to speak to people who were just visiting. And my whole thing, I would just wander up to people. I was like, okay, I'm going to make eye contact. If they make eye contact, if we have a smile, I'll go up and say, hi, I'm Kathryn. I'm University of St Andrews. I'm doing this piece of research. Would you be up for having a chat about this? So I got to speak to such a range of people. And that was really important to me, that I captured a lot of perspectives and a lot of, some people I spoke to were literally just there going like, oh, I work around the corner. I come here for my lunch. It's such a good place to sit and have your lunch. Like, fully is. Borough Market, just down the road. I really wanted to capture as broad a range of people as I could. So yeah, I think that was really important. The sort of ethnography. It's really hard to say that, ethnographic angle. How people interact with the space. That's my bag.
I think that came across very well. May I ask about the zine then? Why do that? Why not just do the video on its own? Was that part of the requirements of the project, or did you really want to, make sure there was other kinds of media that connected in? Partly,
as I said, I did some sort of tactile artwork, and I think the zine sort of fits in with that quite well. The zine was sort of twofold. So partly because zines have such a rich history, with sort of, with subcultures, but also within the LGBTQ community. They're a lovely little, they're easy to make, they're cheap to reproduce, and it's a really simple, effective way of sharing information. And they're often quite sort of creative. It's a way of sharing art and expression. So it seemed like a sort of good call. I was like, yeah, a zine is a good thing to do. What I put in the zine, which again, I'll send you the little online link for it.
Yeah.
But I have dyscalculia, so it's basically dyslexia, but with numbers. So I really struggle with, if somebody says, okay, there's 15,000 people. Is that a lot? Like, I know that's a lot, but like, I don't know how many people would I expect to be buried?
Well, that's the thing, because it's people can't. I mean, can I raid in there and say that the problem with that type of stat is it's really hard for people who don't think of time. And archaeologists think of time even more than historians do. Historians will say, "Oh, we talk about that." You don't. They don't. Historians really struggle with this. And I think, but whatever we do, the broader public, and I'm not being critical, the broader public really struggle with that, because what does that mean in terms of generations? We have these, we talk about, you mentioned millennial earlier, and what does that even mean? I mean, and how many year, these are arbitrary things, but when you're thinking of the number of death rates in a really intensely urban population, I don't want to put it, that is actually quite an accepted number. I mean, but it's difficult to comprehend when you're thinking about how about 40 generations. I don't know.
It was late medieval. Such a long time. But yeah, I find this difficult to do. If somebody said to me, it's even if somebody says, that's 7 football pitches.
Yeah,
that doesn't help me. I can't visualize that.
No.
So I thought with Crossbones, I thought, right, okay, like how can I visualize this for myself? How can I make this make more sense for me as a dyscalculic person? So I started out by thinking like, okay, well, how many London double-decker buses would you need to sit that many people? And they're all getting seats, by the way. They've had a hard enough time. They're not standing on the bus at this point. I thought, okay, London buses, that's okay, let's start with there. And I thought, how many tube trains? What's the nearest tube station? Okay, right, I think that was the Victoria line, right? How many of your standard Victoria carriages would you get? Okay. So yeah, I started off with London public transport, and I thought, the graduation hall just along the road here at St Andrews. You'd need 15 graduation ceremonies to seat that many people. That works for me. That works in my brain, and that works for people at St Andrews. Southwark Cathedral were lovely. The staff there were incredible. When I approached so many times with seemingly quite random questions, going, "Hi, what's your capacity? Can I just ask?" Weird question, sorry, but how many people can you fit in the cathedral? Because that really helped me visualize it, and it was that was the sort of 2 reasons. It's a very accessible way to show information, and it helped my neurodivergent brain. It seems to have helped other people's.
I must admit, the art, I didn't realise, because obviously I saw the video and the zine, and so how did the art link to those? Was that more of just this is a material component, or did you feature them in the video and I missed that bit, or?
No. So what I did, unfortunately, the thing is when I've shown the video and the zine in person, I've brought along these things to go with them. Yeah. And unfortunately, online audiences miss that out.
Okay. Well, it's not, I was feeling a bit guilty.
But yeah, no, I did like little pieces, just like, I took a lot of photos and printed them out, which I haven't done that in a very long time. But, I printed out a bunch of photographs and I embroidered on top of them to bring out detail in them, and just some like flat needle felt embroidery, not needle felt, needle felting. So it was things that could be touched and things that would degrade over time when people handled them. And that's kind of part of it. I don't want these to be just looked at from a distance. It's part of the sort of embodied experience, I think, of a lot of spaces, but Crossbones in particular, that you are allowed, and I'd say almost encouraged, to interact with it in a tactile way.
Yes. Yeah, it's a
more so than you would with
isn't it?
traditional deathscape. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just a visual vista. It's a very intimate space. I imagine, or I sense that, and it's about touching and tying and placing. Yeah, so I think that's really important. So if this was done as a project, as part of a piece of academic work. Do you feel there's more potential for you for this to get this out there? And I hope this interview serves as one conduit, humble though it may be, to sort of package this for people interested. Do you think there's more that could be done with this kind of this approach of, you know, doing this kind of work but then sharing it beyond the academy?
I really hope so. That's something that I'm really keen on, partly because I came to postgraduate studies after a 20-year gap from academia. Like I work in a university, but you know, I have a BSc from a long time ago. And there is definitely, I think particularly you can feel it in, you know, the ancient institutions like both of us work in, that there is a sort of almost like the hallowed halls, you know. And I was very keen not to have my work felt that it was, you know, by an academic for academics. I feel like, yeah, death studies, cemetery studies, it's something that's part of all of our heritage, and it's something that I wanted people to engage with if they want to engage with it. Some people, you know, they'll say, "Oh, what do you do?" And I tell them, and they sort of back away, going, "That's morbid." Yeah, it kind of is, I guess. Yeah, sure. It's not for everyone, but a lot of people are interested in it. And, you know, people go away and think, and then they'll come back and go, "Have you visited this cemetery? Because it's really interesting. It's near where I live." And, you know, they'll tell me stories, and this is something that's in people's psyches that they're interested in. So yeah, I think a film is much more accessible for a non-academic or non-specific, field-specific audience, but also like non-academic at all audiences, you know. I really try hard to shy away from using more technical language because it's not necessary.
Are you someone that yourself has taken this to sort of social media, or do you reasonably reluctant to do that? Because I know a lot of people genuinely, given the current climate and some of these platforms dealing with marginalised people, LGBTQ plus issues, it's not. I'm prefacing this because I'm not saying why aren't you, but I'm saying because I understand very clearly why it can be an absolute hellscape. But I mean, is that something you've ruled out, or you do, or you're not sure?
Not ruled out. So you know, the video is available online at the moment. I have it passworded because today was only the third time that I've shown it to an audience.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
very new.
Well, we don't have to make it public via the.
No, I think that's a good it's a good push for me. I do want to share it, and yeah, you're right. Actually, that has been the thing that's held me back, is thinking, oh, I don't want to be in receipt of the online pile-on of, like, you know, woke lefty pronoun yada. I don't want to engage with that. But you know what? This is part of what I do. You know, it's part of my, you know, I'm a queer person. That's something I talk about very openly as part of my job, and it's just part of my life. It's who I am. I don't want to shy away from sharing my work just because there's people out there who will rattle away on their keyboards and say mean things.
It's always a minority, but a very loud and angry one. And I'm glad, because I mean, I'm aware of quite a few people who've done some really cool stuff with visiting cemeteries and engaging the cemeteries, but they all face in different ways these challenges, and it's really difficult to navigate. And I must admit, it's something I've done as part of my stuff, but I haven't made my only thing, because there's ethical issues about what I show, particularly in cemeteries and tombs, but equally, you know, there's a whole thing about, I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about the subjects. Yeah, so it's a sensitive area, but I think it's worthwhile experimenting with different ways of doing it and sharing it. But I also feel there's still an academic prejudice that video research or anything that's integrating multimedia and then social media is somehow lesser or less worthy or frivolous. And even though I feel I've been doing quite a lot on this, I still get people come to me and go, "Well, I don't do that. That's below me." They don't say it like that, but that's what they mean. It's below me. It's a frivolous extra. It's not. And even with something like death spaces and materials, I think there's a lot of potential here that is still untapped. I don't know if that's fair to say.
I think it goes into how people access things again. I'm lucky in that, because I'm graduating in a couple of weeks. If I was just a student here, I would then lose access to the university library and all of those articles and journals. Luckily, I have a job here, so I retain that access. But a lot of the ways that I consume history and archaeology is through things like podcasts and through YouTube channels. And because something is accessible to a wider audience, pop archaeology or pop history, if you want to call it that, it doesn't mean it's of a lesser quality. It's it's not peer reviewed. It's not, it's not published in a journal. It's like, well, does it have to be? What's the purpose of it? What is it for? Who is it for? And yeah, to be honest, if I hadn't been listening to things like After Dark, would I have had the confidence to go, I'm going to go and study crossbones? I don't know. I think it really helped to see that there are other people doing research with marginalised populations, and that marginalised populations are harder to find in the archive, but they are there. And I want to be part of finding that and sharing that,
But of course, these are things that I, as someone who's not part of the community, I don't want to ignore, and I certainly want to. But equally, I don't want to speak for. So it's always everyone should be talking about these issues. But but equally, it's about making sure the people who have that personal experience, that insight, can be the leading this. And
that's it. So like sharing the spotlight. And I definitely found that like the sort of the research community around marginalized histories they're just a lovely bunch. I think part of me expected academics to be very closed off, and it's not been like that at all. People have been so willing. I've, like with yourself, initially just cold emailing people going, hello.
Yes, no, I appreciated it very much. I was the victim of a cold call, death cold call. That sounds good.
I've just been emailing academics going, hi, I read your article, I really liked it. Would you like to read mine? You feel so, I felt awkward. I'm just socially awkward as a person. But I've had some lovely chats with Eleanor Janiga. Was incredible. She wrote a brilliant book about women in the medieval period, and got in touch with her and said, can I have a chat? Just trying to get my head a bit more around the sort of the Winchester geese. I want to move it away from the sort of constructed narrative. And can you tell me a bit about the history that you know about? Absolutely. Oh, we should go for a pint when you're in London. Just incredibly lovely community. And I think I said that. I was like, everyone's been so nice. She was like, yeah, people don't study marginalized histories, like, unless they're, they don't tend to be nasty people.
And I think that really wraps up all the questions I had. But is there anything you feel we've missed out that you want to share about your project, about the actual practical process or the big ideas that you wanted to get across that we've missed so far?
I don't think so. No, I'm just I'm really thankful for having this opportunity to have a chat. And thank you for as we were just talking about, sharing this part of the sort of broader research that's happening. I love my little niche.
and I really appreciate you getting in touch, because I'm learning all the time, and there's so much in the diffused digital world, and there's so many new voices, and it's really important I'm learning all the time. And so it's particularly that site, and that's what next time I'm down in London, I'm going to be mooching along to have a nose around. And there's also so many cemeteries I haven't visited. I've been very regional in my cemetery, which is no bad thing in itself, because North Wales and the West Midlands and Northwest of England, is neglected in itself. But some of the big sites I still haven't visited, some of the celebrity sites. So I was
living in Edinburgh when I started this project, and just chatting to people, and they're like, so you're studying a site in London? There's some cemeteries in Edinburgh, you could just have done them. Like, well, yes, good point, well made, but no. There's so much still to be done in this field, and it's lovely to be part of it and be getting to getting about it.
Yeah. Well, I wish you well for continuing in it. I do hope, because you seem so brimming with enthusiasm, and I do hope you get an opportunity wherever and however to continue, as well as your day job is pretty important too. But I hope you still, and by say day job, I'm not saying this is somehow not an important thing in itself, but it's you've got many different exciting things you're
EDI
doing.
worker by day, cemetery researcher by night.
I
Yeah,
know,
it makes me sound much more mysterious.
I think this is the way you got to pitch it. Sort of, meanwhile, beneath the mask, sort of moment, and we never see them in the same place at the same time. Could they be the same one? Yeah. Anyway, but no, it's been lovely talking to you, and Kathryn, and I really wish you all the best for the future. And let's keep doing funerary stuff.
Let's do it indeed. Thank you so much.
Follow Archaeodeath on YouTube, TikTok, WordPress, and a host of other social media.